Good afternoon, advisors. Welcome to the 7th webinar in our 2015 series focusing on the Green family, all 4 generations. Like many families, there's drama. They're bold and beautiful, young and restless, and will paint their portrait of risk and look at ways to protect the family and the family business. How will we do it? With insurance solutions tailored to meet their needs as they travel through the days of their lives. They all have just one life to live, but that life will be filled with glee at times and with passions at others. But through it all and across all the generations, they have a guiding light, a trusted team with you, their fee-only financial advisor, and LLIS, the advisor's insurance advisor. As always, today's episode will last about 50 minutes. We know you'll have burning questions, and since these are performed in front of a live audience, feel free to be interactive. Type in your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them timely or at the conclusion of the show. Today's episode is being recorded and will be posted to our website within a week in case you missed a pivotal moment in the story. And throughout 2015, loyal fans will receive 10 CFP-CE credits, 1 for each month you attend. The more you tune in, the more you know. Today's webinar was noted as an advanced business insurance topic with July's webinar as the precursor. So if you haven't yet viewed our July webinar titled Get It in Writing, Then Fund It, you'll want to check that out. We'll focus today on Carl, the business owner, and his team. Today's narrator knows all about business ownership as a former partner in Fee-for-Service, the company that spawned LLIS as an advisor's insurance advisor. And some of LLIS's greatest storylines involve this man, from the policies he's partnered with insurance companies to create solely for fee-only advisors and their clients, to the battle between father and son back in 2003, when Mark came on board here, clawing his way to the top to president and CEO now. This man's industry run has been a long one, about 45 years. That rivals Susan Lucci, and he's just as good at speeches, acceptance or other, as John Hamm and Viola Davis. And now, to present this month's episode, please welcome Keith Maurer.
All are the days of our lives.
Thank you, Dina. I don't know about everything she said about me, but I was chuckling anyway. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I'm getting a little bit of feedback in my headset, but there, I seem to clear it up. Anyway, we're going to talk about the greens, as we've been talking about for the last 9 months, and we'll continue for the rest of the year. This is the green family that, as we've gone through the months, we've had all kinds of fun things happen to him. Andrew, who's on the far left, is the grandfather of the family, whose wife has passed away because of Alzheimer's, and he has 2 children. So, just so later on, if you get confused as to who is who, everybody whose name starts with A, which is only Andrew, is the oldest. His children start with B. Their children start with the letter C, and their children start with the letter D. If there's anybody that's not an A, B, C, or D, then they are a spouse. So you don't really need to know that too much, but if you go back and see some of our past episodes, you'll try to figure out who's who, and that's the way it goes. Anyway, last month, here's what you missed. Mark was talking a lot about Andrew, what he wanted to do with his grandchildren, which then got involved with children, some children with special needs. So I'm not going to rehash that, obviously, but if you missed it or you want to hear it again, it is now on our website on demand. So you can hear Mark talking about the children and the grandchildren if you like. Here are the green families. We're going to focus mainly on Carl, who is the grandson of Andrew. But if you remember from 2 months ago, Carl has his own business. We had his business with his dad, Ben, but Ben passed away at the end of the episode, and now Carl is the sole owner, and he has a key person named Kelly. But we're going to be focusing in on Carl right now. So those are the 2 who owned it, but he is there. So we're going to talk about rewarding and keeping good employees. As you know, some rewards may be worth it, and good boy. And some may not be so good. Actually, I got this at, I think it was the Pizza Hut, and it said, flip over for a chance to win. Well, it is not easy to do a flip inside the Pizza Hut, but I must not have done a very good job of flipping because I didn't win. Anyway, there was supposed to be sort of cheering and laughter going on during that time. I did get one applause, so I guess that works. One thing here at the office that we get a lot that I'm sure you don't get is a lot of stuff about insurance, that people do surveys and all that kind of stuff, and so we get a lot of data. And this sort of came across my desk, and it was interesting to me is what people perceive about life insurance. It had nothing to do about our webinar today, but it just was a fact I thought was sort of interesting. A survey was done asking numerous people as to what they thought the cost of a 20-year term policy for $250,000 would cost for a healthy 30-year-old man. 80% of them guessed the price would be over $400 a year. Actually, 25% guessed it would be over $1,000 a year. In reality, it costs $160 a year. That's about $13 to $14 a month. So put that in perspective of what other things we spend on a monthly basis. Most people on the average spend $61 a month for their phone. They pay $64 a month to watch their cable TV. They spend $80 a month on coffee, and they spend on average $140 a month on fast food and takeout. So $13 a month to ensure your family's financial health seems to be a real bargain when it compares to that, but people don't perceive it that way. They perceive it as much more expensive. So, what's the topic today? Well, this is keeping and rewarding employees. We're going to talk just briefly about salary continuation because I went in quite detail about that back in July. We're going to talk a little bit more about the bonus program only because later on I sort of put a twist to a few of the bonus programs. I want to talk a little bit about split dollar, which is not a mechanism. It is a funding mechanism, and it is a funding mechanism that I think most people don't know about, appreciate, and don't use, and I think is a great tool, and we'll talk about that. What else do you do for employees and is for securing loans, key person, buy-sell. I talked a lot about buy-sell stock redemption. I'm going to talk a little bit now this time about buy-sell cross-purchase. And I'll touch on the DI and long-term care, how you can reward employees using those two as well. But I'm focusing mostly on life insurance. So, salary continuation. As a review, if you remember salary continuation, we have Kelly here, who was the top salesman for the flying carpet, and they wanted to give her a benefit that they could specifically give to her without screwing up the whole salary formula and all that kind of stuff. So they guaranteed her, they got in writing, a salary continuation program that said if Kelly dies before she retires, then the company would pay her $100,000 a year for 10 years to her named beneficiary. And if she retires at age 62 or later, the company would pay her $100,000 a year for 10 years. So that was a salary continuation program. As you notice, in this situation, Kelly really has nothing here except a promise to have a pay. So there's no tax to her until some kind of money is received by her beneficiary or later at her death, or excuse me, her retirement. So it's always company-owned, company-paid for. I'll come back to that. I just want to review that. Then the 162 bonus program. Again, a review. What is a bonus program? This is where the policy is owned by the employee. The policy, the company bonuses to her, in this situation, her, the premiums. So the premiums are deductible to the company, taxable to her, and the employee names the beneficiary. And it can be term or cash value life insurance. Okay. Why would you do a 162 bonus? Well, you could fund policy bank loans. You do a cross-purchase now, buy-sell, not stock redemption, cross-purchase. Maybe an employee benefit, just because you want to have an additional benefit to an employee. And you can fund one's own salary continuation. When I did this last time, the third point there, the benefit to the employee, I got various questions that says, I understand what you just said, which is the company pays the premium for the employee has to pay income tax on that, and then they go buy the insurance. Isn't that the same thing as just giving the person an increase in salary? And the answer is yes. In the taxation of it, and it sort of is, but sometimes that isn't what they really want to have accomplished. And this is a real case. This happens to be a financial planner. He happens to be in Colorado, which will sort of eliminate down to some that you may know who this is. But it was a male. He was the financial planner, and he had an office assistant who was a single mom with 2 young children. His worries were, what if something happens to this? What if she dies? What's going to happen to the kids? And it really was a concern to him because he knew she had no life insurance. And he, as an employer at this point, had no group insurance or no plans of any kind of benefit that there was a corporate option for her to buy life insurance. Now, he said, I could just give her more money to buy some term policy, but his worry was, would she really do it, and wouldn't she just spend it? I mean, probably every single mom that has 2 young children would probably spend every dollar they have, or they could get their hands on themselves and their kids and their food and everything else. So he said, I could give her a raise, but I'm paying her well now. She doesn't own life insurance. So what he did was he basically put in a bonus plan. He said, here's what I'm going to do. Office assistant, you need to apply for insurance. You will own the insurance. You will name the beneficiary, but my firm will pay the premium. We will be what's called the payor. So the bill comes to the office. The company pays her term premiums. She has to take it as income, but the point is that he knew for a fact that the insurance was in place, and if something happened to her while she was employee, his firm was paying the premiums, and he just felt that he was taking care of something that needed to be taken care of, and there's no way you can really force an employee to buy life insurance. Here's a different way of doing it. So it's still just a 162 bonus plan, but the motivation of why you do it was truly a benefit and different situation in how you look at it. Okay, split dollar. Now, for those of you who know me and know me well, I want you to bear with me and not sort of tune out because you say, well, split dollar, I don't do split dollar. Listen to why I think is one of the least used and one of the unique best benefits, that if you have access to company money, you have to have a corporation or a business, and you control that, so you have access to it. So your employees, your clients who own small businesses, or you who own your own small business, and there's such thing as no-load life insurance, where the high immediate cash value on permanent insurance, then it is a tool that I think you really should at least listen to. For those of you who don't know me, why would you listen? Well, number one, your clients are seeing this anyway, and you might as well know what it is they're being shown so you can at least understand it, explain it, and look at it and see if it's a good deal or not. And I know your clients are seeing it because I get to do the policy reviews for them. So your clients are already seeing split dollar that you're not presenting, somebody else is presenting. Number two, if you like term, if you really like term, if you love term, then this is the way that you can get the cheapest term for your client, absolutely bar none. I mean, it is dirt cheap. It is cheaper than any term you've ever seen. It is the cheapest way to buy term ever. Number three, if you have company money, the company controls the policy. You don't lose control. 162 bonus, you lose control. Most of these things, the company loses control. Here's a way you can keep control of the policy and still control the death benefit. Number four, there's huge tax advantages to doing this. So there's a lot of reasons why I think you should learn about split dollar and consider it if you have clients who have a business, or yourself if you have your own business. Okay, what is a split dollar? Why split dollar? Well, there's a lot of reasons, I think. It's a great way to reward and to keep employees. It's a benefit not usually used or understood that often. The business recovers their cost. I'm going to use this phrase probably more than once when we see real numbers. I'll use it again. Corporation, I don't want your money. I want the use of your money. And employer, you will recover your money anytime the employee dies or if the employee leaves or end of the period and you surrender the policy because of low load. So I don't want your money. I want the use of your money. Later on, I'll show you how you can actually end a split dollar with a bonus program, and actually you can do what you want with the death benefit during this period of time, and at the end when the employee retires, it could substantially supplement their retirement plan. And for those of you who hadn't figured out, you can do a split dollar with yourself when you're the corporation and you're the employee, so maybe a way that you can actually purchase your own insurance at a very low term cost and actually start supplementing part of your retirement plan as well. And we're going to talk about endorsement split dollar, where the company endorses the death benefit over, the company stays in control. They own the policy, they pay the premiums, they own the cash values, they control the policy, and anytime they want to change the situation where you may want a different employee to be the beneficiary of the policy or something like that, you can do that. You don't lose control. So how does it work? Well, I'm going to talk, even though the employee got big, I'm going to talk about the employer first. The employer enters into a split dollar agreement with the employee. It basically says, I'm going to own an insurance policy on you, and I will endorse to you a death benefit. So the company owns the policy, pays the premium, and then endorses a death benefit over to the employee. But endorsing the death benefit, what that does, it grants the employee the right to designate the beneficiary. So they'll probably name their spouse or their loved ones, whoever they want to name as a beneficiary. But yet the employer still retains the policy if the arrangement is ever terminated. And I will give a couple examples why you may want to do that. From the employee, what do? They're now the beneficiary of this death benefit. They control this death benefit, so they designate who the beneficiary is going to be. They have to recognize that as income equal to the economic benefit, and that's where this very low cost comes in. Matter of fact, they don't pay the economic benefit. They're only going to pay the tax on the economic benefit. Now, my examples I'm going to use is Carl here. I'm going to assume he's in the 30% tax bracket, so his out-of-pocket cost is only going to be the tax on the economic benefit, which is already low. And if he's in the 30% tax bracket, it's 30% of a very, very low premium. So his cost to him, out-of-pocket cost to him is going to be very low. What happens at death? At death, the beneficiary that Carl names is going to get their portion that was endorsed over to him, income tax-free, and then the employer gets the balance of the death benefit, income tax-free. And the way we normally set it up is a death benefit, which is a universal life option B, so that the cash values, which are equal to or exceed the premium with a low load, is what goes back to the employer, and the death benefit, the face amount usually goes to the employee. So let's look at real numbers. Okay, sorry, should have done that when I was talking about it. Here's Carl. Carl's 45. He's a preferred rate, not preferred plus, preferred rate, second best class. We're going to buy a $500,000 policy, option B, meaning the cash value is in addition to the death benefit. So this is what the employer pays. The employer is going to pay $14,000 a year. They're going to have a cash value and a death benefit equal to the cash value at the end of the first year, which is $12,158. By the way, this is the low-load universal life, and I'm using 4.5% interest rate assumption. Let's go to 10 years because it's easy to multiply times 10. In 10 years, the company's put in $140,000, and they have $149,000 cash value and or death benefit. And at the end of 20 years, it's 280, and they have 346. So what happens about Carl? Well, Carl gets to name the death benefit of $500,000. What is that worth? Well, the government says that's an economic benefit that year of $270. After tax, because he's in the 30% tax bracket, he's going to pay $75 that year for $500,000 of death benefit. Each year as he gets older, the economic benefit goes up a little bit, so he's going to end up in 10 years, the economic benefit for $500 is $480, so it's $134. So in total, the corporation paid $280. In total, he will have paid over 20 years $3,090. Well, what would be a different option? A different option would be is he goes out and buys a 20-year term, because that's basically what he has. He has $500,000 of death benefit for 20 years, of which over 20 years he's paid a total of $3,090. If he would have got some of the best preferred term we could find out there, he's a guaranteed level, $720 a year, so in 20 years he would have paid $14,400. So what have we done? For Carl, who owns the business, he wanted 20-year, a $500,000 term. Instead of him costing him $14,400, it only cost him $3,090. It took time value of money out of the company. In 20 years, they put in $280,000. They're going to get a small rate of return. They're going to get $343,749 if they surrender it. So they get their money back plus a little bit. So it's sort of a win-win-win. A question here is, can the split dollar work for LLC or a C Corp or an S Corp? The answer is yes. The tax advantages, the answer is yes to all those questions. The tax advantages to an S Corp is not as great as a C Corp, but an S Corp many times wants to keep the premiums in the corporation for various other reasons, bank loans, maybe they want to sell the business later, do a lot of things, so they don't want to necessarily take it out. But the tax advantage, the economic benefit is the same regardless of that. So yes, it works in all situations. Most of the time we look at C Corps, but it's irrelevant. It works in all forms of education. So good deal for Carl, right, in my opinion. Employer, I don't want your money. I want the use of your money. This is a low load. Those are actual cash surrender values. Each year, anytime you want to change, you could do that. But hey, he happens to have another employee. This is Tim. Well, Tim is also 45, but Tim is a type 1 diabetic. He is a table 4. They want to do the same thing with Tim. $500,000 option B for age 45, table 4. What's it look like from the employer's point of view? Corporation, I don't want your money. I want the use of your money. Yes, it costs more money. It's going to cost $18,500 instead of $14,000. In 10 years, I've put in $185,000. I've got $184,073. For rounding errors, I'll say close to my money back. And in 20 years, I put in $370,000, and I got $397, so I got a little bit of rate of return. But what about Tim? He's table 4, right? You can't get good term insurance rates for him. Huh. What's the economic benefit for Tim, table 4? $270. What's his out-of-pocket cost? $75. The law does not distinguish the rating of the policy. What it says is, what is the economic value for a male age 45 to designate a beneficiary for $500,000? And it says that cost is $270 that year. Doesn't say what the insurance cost him. Doesn't say if he's rated or not. It says what's the economic benefit. So that's the same thing. Now, what happened to the corporation? They paid more money, but they got more money back. What did it cost him? For 20 years, it cost him $3,090. What would it cost him if he had bought term? What's the normal? What would you normally do? Say, well, you need $500,000 for the next 20 years. I got to go buy you some 20-year term. It's going to cost you, $1,900 a year. That's $38,000. See, is the cash value and the death benefit column is just the cash value listed? Well, the question is I have cash value and death benefit, but it's only one number. That is because this is a $500,000 option B. With a $500,000 option B, anytime an option B, it says you get the face amount plus the cash value as your death benefit. So yes, they're the same number because of the way we're doing it. I could have done a 600,000 level death benefit and said you get 500 and I get 100, but I'm doing it as an option B. So the death benefit and the cash value are exactly the same because since I'm endorsing over the 500,000, what's left, the balance is coming to the corporation, is the Venus or the cash value of the death benefit. So those are the same because they, in essence, are the same in an illustration. So, this is a good deal for this situation, but, I said, well, one of the, let's see, I'm going to make sure my next slide is so I'm not getting ahead of myself. Just a second. Okay, I'm going to go back a second. One of the things I said is the company always has control. Well, let's say for sake of argument that Tim decides he wants to do something else. If we would have just bonused him the premium, because we're a good employer and we wanted him to have a term policy, we would have bonused that premium of $19,000. And after 7 or 8 or 10 years, he leaves. I have nothing left. What can I do? Well, you just gave him the term policy and he walked away with it. Here, if you change, if he leaves, if he dies, you have all the flexibility in the world because the employer is the one who owns the policy. You can stop the endorsement anytime you want. If for some reason he no longer needs the insurance, wants the insurance, and the corporation can theoretically can endorse his death benefit over to someone else. So you don't do that except for odd situations where you do buy sells, and I'll talk about that later. So, why would you use split dollar? Well, again, anytime you think you need term insurance, it can be funded with split dollar if you have access to a corporate. So why would you ever use term insurance? Well, you may use it to fund a policy for a bank loan. Definitely is an employee benefit, especially for Tim. That's a heck of a benefit. Cross-purchase, I'm going to talk about that in just a couple of seconds. A bonus at retirement. Just think about this policy that had the $300-some thousand of cash value in it. Yes, it's the corporation's, but if it happened to be Carl himself, he could, since he controls the company, he could bonus that policy to himself. At that point, it would be income to him and tax deductible to that. But, he may not be able to get insurance any other way. And those of you who know about Pension Max, he may want to use that as a life insurance to maximize his pension plan. Or there's a lot of reasons why you can do it, but there's no law that says you can't recover all your costs, but you could bonus it to the employee. And a combo of salary continuation. It also can be a combo with key person. The reason I bring that up is because with key person, if you remember, there really wasn't anything in it for the employee. The company owns the business, and I'm going to talk about that in a second too. But you can add this and give some of the death benefit to the employee and make it a good deal for the employee as well. The cost will be minimal to the company and a great benefit to the employee. So let's look at it about securing a loan. Again, this is more for I'm using Carl, but it's a lot of your clients may be starting a business because they've made their money, want to start a new business, or you're starting your own firm. You need a loan. It's usually startup. You usually many times it's a startup business. You usually have a small amount of assets. So what happens? The bank says, well, you have to personally have life insurance for the liability of the loan. And what does a good old bank do? The bank says, hey, I got a great deal for you. I'll tell you what, we have this deal called decreasing term, and you just sign right here, and there'll be life insurance that will pay off your loan should you die prior to, and you have exactly the loan balance. Or, of course, you could have your own personal insurance if you want to use that as collateral. Well, and by the way, for those of you who do this kind of stuff, and just remember, anytime you do a collateral assignment of insurance for a loan, that when it's paid off, make sure you get the release of the collateral assignment, because it may be hard to do later on, especially if the bank merges with another bank, who knows what. So anyway, So let's look at some of this. Here's the deal. $100,000 loan, and these are real numbers. The bank offered a 20-year decreasing term policy for $558 a year. This was actually still a male age 45. Now, with decreasing term, the amount of death benefit you get goes down each year, but the premium stays level. So the first year, that's $5.58 $1,000. But if it was as a death benefit goes down, but the premium stays the same, it gets very, very, very expensive. What could have we done? Well, you could do an individual policy, $100,000 20-year level, and it's $226. If we would have done split dollar, it would have only cost $618 over 20 years. That's like $30 a year. Here's Carl. Here's another real case. This was a 10-year. It was a business loan. The other one happened to be actually a mortgage. This is a business loan, $50,000 loan, and the bank offered a $309 decreasing term over 10 years. He could have bought a 10-year term for $160. Still, say, well, that's obviously a better deal. But if we would have done split dollar, it would have, the total cost over the full 10 years of his economic benefit, tax and economic benefit, would have only been $206. Not per year. That's for over 10 years. So, example of where an employee or the owner, it may be the same situation, needs a personal loan. It's a much, much better deal. First of all, it's always a better deal in decreasing term. It's a better deal in another kind of term. What about key person? Key person, again, I went over this in July. It's a valued asset. Business owns the policy. Business is the beneficiary. Premiums are not deductible, usually term insurance. Why don't we even mention key person? It's because there's nothing in for the key person. I mean, this is a good deal for the business. And, of course, it's a good deal for technically all the other employees, because if the key person died, many times the business would be hurting status, so at least there would be cash to keep the business going so they could find 2 or 3 more salesmen for Kelly to replace your business. But can you split dollar a term policy? The answer is yes, you can. It's usually not done because there's no way to recover your costs the way you would do with permanent insurance. But you could have a $500,000 key person, but actually buy $600,000 and make $100 of that endorsed over to the key person as a benefit, as a thank you for being my key person. I'm going to insure your life, and I'm going to get the majority of it, but you're going to get something out of this type of situation. So we've had key people sort of balk at having insurance owned by the business, and the business is the only beneficiary. And here's a way of doing it. So that he had to pay the economic benefit, but that was pennies. So now, buy, sell. Last month, or 2 months ago, I talked about buy, sell as a stock redemption, which is still probably the most used way of doing buyouts. It is the business owns the policy, business is the beneficiary, the business buys and then redeems the shares at death. Premiums are not deductible. The death benefit is income tax free, and the heirs get up at a stepped up in cost basis, so it's pretty much tax free to the heirs as well. How did it work? Here is it. Remember, this is stock redemption. The business, which is the flying carpet, they get in a contract. Buy sell is a contract. Get it in writing. Is a contract to the 2 owners. In this situation, it was to Kelly and Carl. The contract says you must sell, or your heirs must sell, and I must buy, the company, must buy your shares at death at an agreed-upon price. What does the business do? They go buy insurance on both Carl and Kelly so that they pay the premiums to the insurance company. They own the policy. What happens at death? At death, they get the death benefit. The company gets the death benefit. They go out. They redeem the shares from the heirs. They buy the shares, bring the stock back into the company, retire it, and therefore then the other employee now owns all. So when Kelly dies, what happens to Carl? his shares just got bigger as a percentage of all of the business. It says, I have a question here. It says, what kind of expenses does an owner incur for the legal work to set up a split dollar deal? Okay, I do not practice law, but usually you can get a split dollar agreement for probably $200 to $300 at the most. I'm saying this with a deep breath first because I do not practice law. We do have, as do almost any insurance agents, we do have sample agreements that our insurance companies offer to our clients. You still should have it done by a lawyer, but it is a sample agreement that can be used for split dollars. So it's usually fairly straightforward, not too, I mean, if you want to do something really odd and strange, you probably need more of a document, but it shouldn't cost more than a couple $300 to get a split dollar agreement, especially if you could offer the attorney the boilerplate one already filled out. So how about now cross-purchase? Cross-purchase is another way of doing buy-sell. You still have the agreement, but what it says is outside the company, A says, I will buy the shares from B's estate. B says, I will buy the shares from A's estate. The company's not going to do anything here. The shares are going to stay outstanding, and they're going to buy it. So if you're going to fund it with insurance, then A owns a policy on B, and B owns a policy on A. Pretty straightforward that way. So in this situation, owner A, which is Kelly, buys a policy on Carl, pays for it herself, owns it herself, and names herself the beneficiary. Excuse me. And same way with Carl, he would buy a policy on Kelly, he would own it, he'd pay for it, and he would be the beneficiary. All that is done with after-tax dollars. So yeah, it can be term. So you say, well, that's pretty cheap that way. But first of all, in this situation, more than likely the premiums on Kelly, since she's female, and we know for a fact she's 6 years younger, is going to be less than on Carl. So Carl, who's more of a major owner, is going to pay less for insurance on Kelly than Kelly is buying on Carl. And remember, there could have been Tim involved in there, where Tim was table 4. And then the insurance of who buys the insurance on Tim is really going to be tough because it's not Tim who pays for the premiums, it's the other ones. So that's the way you normally fund a cross-purchase buy-sell. You own insurance on the other person, and then they own it on you. What happens if you want to fund it with split dollar? Well, now the flying carpet is going to own both policies. They're going to own a policy on Kelly and Carl. They're going to pay the premiums. They're going to get the cash values. But the company endorses the death benefit on Carl's policy to Kelly and the policy on Kelly to Carl. So now, in essence, they both have what they had before. Kelly owns or designates the beneficiary herself of the death benefit on Carl, just like when she owned the term policy, but now it's going to be with after-tax dollars only on the economic benefit. Another great benefit of this is, which I didn't go into in much detail, but let's say the Carl does die. He still owns a policy on Kelly. Well, why? And how do you get it back? It's just messy. On split dollar, remember, if Carl dies, the insurance policy owned on Kelly is owned by the company that Kelly now controls. And the endorsement would stop. An endorsement can stop any moment in time. It's not a lifetime endorsement. So now the policy is owned by the company on Kelly, the major owner. And so if they want to then find another partner, that policy would still work, and they can then designate, the company could then endorse over to, owner C that they've come into the business. So it's because they keep control, it's still so much cleaner than it was before. And if you have two, we just did that. If you have 3 or 4 or 5 owners, then everybody has to own a policy on everybody else. So if you have 3 owners, owner A has to own a policy on B and C. B has to own one on A and C has to own one on A and B. So if you have 3 owners, you got 6 policies if you do cross-purchase individual policies. If you do split dollar, it's just you own as many policies as there are owners. 3 policies, 3 owners, 3 policies, 6 policies, 6 owners. So if you want to do cross purchase, especially if there's more than 2, it really works well. Okay. I'm going to talk just slightly about disability because the topic is keeping and rewarding employees. Well, when we talked about business insurance before, we talked about the disability of the buyout, of the buy-sell, of the business overhead, and the policy loan protection plan, and key person. All of that is for the benefit of the company, really. But what can you do for the employee? Well, it's called gap insurance. And the gap is really the difference between most group coverage that most companies have, many companies do have, is limited. So to somebody like Kelly or somebody who makes more than most situations is capped at either $60,000 or $100,000 a year, you can actually then bonus to the employee, or the company can own it and give the employee that gap between what they're really owning so that they can get the full 60% of their full salary, not just up to the group plan. If you have questions about that, you can ask for either Kelly or now Brian. If you haven't talked to Brian, Brian's relatively new. He's been with us, I don't know, since January, I guess. And he's helping Kathy out in the disability. You may be talking to him about term insurance and other insurance as well, but he came from us from a disability carrier, so he's quite knowledgeable about disability as well. So you have both Kathy and Brian now for disability. What about long-term care? This is almost as hidden, in my opinion, as split dollar. Here's the thing, that if you have access to a corporation, I'm not sure why people aren't doing this more. There is a huge tax advantage when a business pays for the long-term care for an employee. It makes a difference how much is deductible, if it's a sole proprietorship, if it's a partnership, if it's an S Corp, or if it's a C Corp. So I'm not going to go through all of that. There's tables as based on the age of the person and what kind of business you are, how much of the premium is taxable, and it's up to a limit, but it's still taxable. So I'm going to zero in for right now on a C Corp. So the tax advantages is that if it's paid, the premiums are paid by the business, and it's tax. There's no tax to the employee. It's not like a 162 bonus, and it's deductible. Excuse me, I don't have a slide there. It's deductible to the company, 100% of the premium, deductible to the company. There's no tax to the employee for having the insurance, and when the benefit is paid, it's income tax free to the benefit to the employee. It's just a great deal. When it's a C Corp and the employer pays the benefits, it can be to the employee, it can be for the employee's spouse, or a dependent of an employee. And the business can take 100% deduction for any of those, for all the premiums paid, not just for the employee. The deductions are not limited based on age for the IRS table, which would be on the sole proprietorship and the other forms. The employer, now I can't do total, just you and anybody whose name ends with a letter C or something, but you can be fairly creative and say it can go to all senior executives, it can go to senior executives that have been with us 10 years. I mean, you can select a classification of employees. You can have only, senior vice presidents can also have their spouses or whatever. So it's a little bit that way, but it can be varied. There's not the strenuous task the way there would be on a pension plan and that kind of stuff. So it's fairly selective who you have to do this for, what to do this for. And the deductibility of the premiums for the spouses and dependents as well. It's not just employees. So it's in my opinion, it's all good deals. If that's, again, if you have access to a corporation, why not let the corporation pay the premiums and the employee gets all the benefits? And since it's income tax free to the employee, it's not part of their gross income. And questions about that, Jill McNeil. Jill's our long-term care expert. Probably the backup would be Mark. But so think about this. It's a great benefit. The point of this is what's benefits for employees to retain and reward them. That's a great way. It's a tax advantage, deductible to the corporation, not taxable to the employee. Benefit is income tax to the employee, income free to the employee, and you can include spouses and dependents. It's a great deal. Okay, stay tuned for next month. Next month we will have the teacher and the family business session. Should Carl get his benefits from Jennifer's spousal benefit from Jennifer's employer? What will happen to the family? All the family benefits and finances when Jenny is fired because of her teaching job because she did inappropriate Facebook post. Oh, you don't know what's going on in these families. But Mark Maurer will come in and tell you what will happen when those suspicious things happen to our family of the Greens. For those of you who are out and about, here's where we're going to be. Somebody from LLIS is going to be at the Fall NAPA Conference end of October. And the Genesis will have a special Wednesday night social. We have a few webinars for the XYPN, the ACP, and the Garrett memberships. But I do want to sort of focus in on Walk the Walk. That's our academy for next year. Our academy is February 4th and 5th. It's Walk the Walk. It's at a new place this year. It's along Tampa's new Riverwalk. We think we have a nice downtown here, but there's a brand new Riverwalk. Probably none of you have, unless you live here, have seen it. The hotel is right on the river, and so you can walk along all the way down to the Fine Arts Building and that kind of stuff. So, but it's also Walk the Walk. If you walk the walk, you talk the talk. So if you want to learn some intense knowledge about insurance, all forms of insurance, plan on registering and showing up on February 4th and 5th. The weather in Tampa, for those of you who don't know, is better than it is in Boston, for those of you who had snow last year. Our last three seminars, I just talked about Mark doing the family one. We have the insurance challenges for the unusual occupation and the non-working life, and then how insurance can minimize family risks. So that's the rest of our webinars. Here are some of the firms, the people we sponsor, which is made up of all of you, and we appreciate you, and hopefully you appreciate us being sponsors. And do we have any questions? I've actually got done a little bit. I was going to go into more deeply in the split dollar, but I was told here that I should not, because I could talk 3.5 hours to 4 hours just on split dollar alone. But hopefully, I think I've answered the questions as they've come up. If you think of any, or if you want to ask some later on, ask them. I will personally guarantee a response back, usually within 24 hours, maybe more. But and so anything you come later on, this will also has been taped and will be out on our PowerPoint, so that you. Because I'm sure everybody kind of wants to say, oh, I can't wait to hear that one again. So, having no more questions, I'm going to get you out of class early today. So, thank you for listening, and stay tuned next month for Mark and the benefits for the spouse as they lose their jobs. Stay tuned. Thanks. Bye.